All right. Well, Tom Szaky, welcome to the Environmental Transformation Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on. For the listeners who don't know, Tom is the founder and CEO of Terracycle. I mean, they are a global leader in the collection of and repurposing of complex waste streams. And Tom started there, I don't know how long ago. We'll let him kind of give us a little intel on that. But it looks like Terracycle's been operating in about 20 countries now. And you guys have a worldwide presence, which is pretty awesome. And you're working with some of the largest brands, retailers, and manufacturers to create the national platforms to recycle products and packaging that otherwise go to the landfill. So, man, you guys are really establishing and really kind of, amping up this circular economy platform. I think it's really cool, especially with the Loop program that you just been kind of really pushing out hard here in the past couple of years now or so. You also are an author of 4 books, it looks like. Interesting. I've not read them, but I'm kind of curious now that I need to kind of dig into those a little bit. But looks like Revolution in a Bottle, Outsmart Waste, Making Garbage Great. I love that one. And The Future of Repackaging. So welcome, Tom.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I have been watching you, following you on LinkedIn quite a bit, and just watching the progress that Terracycle and Loop are making, which is, awesome. And tell us a little bit about your journey to, how you became the CEO of Terracycle and all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess for me, this all began in my first year of college. I came down to New Jersey for school, and I had fallen in love with entrepreneurship, even in high school, but really for the normal trappings of fame and fortune, that come with entrepreneurship. And I had this big turning moment in it was the first year of school, of university, and I was taking a class in introductory economics. And so the first class, first everything at school, the professor gets up on stage, and the first question she asks is, what's the purpose of business? And it's a very reasonable sort of opening question. And the answer she was looking for was profit to shareholders, maximizing profit to shareholders. And I get it. I think profit's very important. I'm very much a capitalist, but I felt a little uninspired by that answer, in the sense that, most businesses interact with many stakeholders, and I think most of them don't care at all about profit to shareholders. And so it really sort of set me on a journey to think about how can I create a business that was profitable and could grow, because profit is an indicator of health, but was going to do something very purposeful. And I landed on garbage because I think it's one of the most interesting and least studied, least attractive subjects relative to its scale. So think about some of these weird anomalies in garbage. We live in a society today where we measure our value in no small part equal to the amount of accumulated stuff we have. And yet everything we own, with not a single exception, will be property of a garbage company one day. I mean, that's huge. And for how big that is, the things we do with garbage are incredibly uninnovative. 99% of it we put in a pile or burn. And it's also, this is the case of such a huge industry with such low innovation because garbage is very unattractive. It's in fact the least innovative industry per dollar of revenue that it enjoys. And this is all because, it's literally the shit we flush down the toilet. It is literally, something that we don't enjoy, we don't like, we are repulsed by it. It is in the nature of what garbage is. And so it's ripe for purposeful innovation. I mean, everyone's asleep, and it's so much opportunity to play and to reimagine, constructs that are in there. And to me, it's been an incredible journey. Terracycle has grown every year now for 17 years. This year's no exception, and next year won't be either. And we really get to have this wonderland of sort of purposeful business model making.
Yeah. No, that's excellent. That's spot on with the observation. I mean, you think about, our population potential growth over time. I mean, we've got, the world's going to keep growing population wise. That means we're going to keep generating more waste, right? How do we, achieve some sort of a better way of managing that as we grow? And I think it is a very untapped market. You've got the big waste players out there. But they're really focusing on filling assets, you know?
Yeah,
And so
it's exactly right.
your approach is really innovative, and I really appreciate it. Um, well, I love how you refer to Terracycle as a social enterprise, eliminating the idea of waste. So what makes Terracycle a social enterprise?
So there's many ways to define social enterprise or purposeful enterprise or mission-driven company. I don't think there's any right answer. But the way we do it is we say, we stand for one central mission, which is to eliminate the idea of waste. And everything we do, with no exception, is always built to reinforce that. So Terracycle will only recycle materials, will never incinerate or landfill. We're really focused on every business model we create, helping to fulfill that central goal of, how do we eliminate the idea of waste? And then any indirect thing we do, like where we're located, is about how can it help society or the planet. So, we locate in inner cities everywhere we can. Our global headquarters are smack dab in the middle of Trenton, New Jersey, which is not a glamorous city, to say the least. We try to make sure that, our programs give as much social value. So, we've donated just under $50 million to charities and schools for helping to collect and recycle waste with us. Everything we do is linked to that central mission. And then we also reinvest the vast majority of our profits into innovating new disruptions and new ways to bring about a fundamental shift to the circular economy.
No, that's great. I mean, I just did a podcast with a electrical contractor, and their mission is nonprofit now, and their premise is effective altruism. And so they're taking 100% of their profits and donating it to, charities of some sort to make an impact. And I thought that was pretty amazing. They've already donated over $100,000, and they've only been in business for a year and a half. I was like, oh my gosh, it's pretty cool. So, but no, I really love that, and what you guys are doing to help inner cities and to help areas that need attention. And I think that really speaks to people who are wanting to partner with you guys, right? They're like, hey, I want to partner with these guys because I know if I do, I'm getting like 2 for 1 here. I'm making, a good decision on managing my waste, but I'm also getting, some benefit of, benefiting some charities that need it too, right? That's pretty cool.
That's exactly right. And this really goes to this underpinning point, which I would share with any entrepreneur, anyone interested in sort of, getting involved in purposeful business, is that purpose is very valuable. It's not just a sacrifice. In fact, if you really wield the idea of purpose right, it is something that will help accelerate your business. Purpose allows you to attract incredibly high quality talent. It allows doors to be opened. It allows, even as this example, the media to be very interested in you. It allows all these things to happen that will lubricate your chance of success. Because, the world is looking for purpose. I mean, we're not in a happy news cycle. 2020 is the pinnacle of that. But even before 2020, news wasn't happy, and people want the world to be good, and they want to be good, and they want to support organizations that help that come to life. Now, you have to really steward purpose, and you have to honor it, but it is very valuable. And I would really recommend anyone in business to embrace that, because isn't it great to make money and help the planet and society simultaneously versus one is in contrast with the other?
Well, right. And I think that kind of gets to one of my questions I had for you, which was, when did you see the industry's mindset change, to start adopting this mindset, circular economy, doing better for, the world and charities and other, organizations. I thought that was, when did you see this happening? Because it's been kind of recent.
Yeah, it has. And I would say that in the specific microcosm of waste, like that topic, waste has always been a problem. No one's ever said it's a good thing, but it went from being a problem to a crisis specifically at the end of 2017. That's when the world woke up to ocean plastic as a thing. It was marked by social media trending of a turtle with a straw up its nose, with Sir David Attenborough's Blue Planet 2. Those all came about at the same time, and the world suddenly went nuts. That's when the straw started being sacrificed, and everyone woke up, and they haven't, gone to sleep, let's say, on this topic. I think the general idea of purposeful business, though, the early starts of that were probably in the 70s, with great examples like the Body Shop or Stonyfield Yogurt, these Ben and Jerry's, these people who said, let's make traditional products with if it's Body Shop, an activist, leaning, or Ben and Jerry's, thinking, well, of course, about social movements and their form of activism, or better ingredients. And then the sort of modern version, it's really ballooning now. I mean, it's a beautiful time that started about 2 years ago. And you can also see that look at recent IPOs and how they've done in the purposeful movement. I mean, Beyond Meat went public last year on financials that weren't phenomenal, 88 million in revenue and more than 30 million in loss, and were worth 10 billion and still are today. I mean, the number, that's phenomenal, and that's entirely linked to the purpose it stands for, not its revenue and profit.
Right.
It's the revenue and profit don't deserve a 10 billion valuation, but its purpose does. Even Airbnb in the middle of COVID just went public and did, a very similar type of results. And these are all organizations that are pushing towards a more circular, more restorative way of commerce.
I love it. I mean, it is pretty fascinating, and it is interesting times. How has Terracycle been able to engage consumer manufacturers to collaborate and support this free national recycling program? I mean, this has been pretty amazing to see. I've been, kind of looked in your website, and I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive. You got some big names here. Talk about how that idea came about, and how long did that take before they started really getting on board and saying, I want to do this with you?
Yeah. So, all success, like overnight success is a long time in the making. But maybe I'll go to sort of first what gets companies to want to fund national recycling programs. So to take a big step back, what makes something recyclable versus not? What makes your aluminum can highly recyclable is that it's profitable for a garbage company to bother collecting it. And the value of the aluminum will cover the cost of picking it up, sorting it out, and processing it. But what makes most things not recyclable, whether it's a writing instrument, or a toothbrush, or even flexible food packaging and many other things, is that it simply costs more to collect and process than the results are worth. So it's an economic issue. So we go to stakeholders like brands, retailers, but also cities and facilities and so on. But brands and retailers are big for us, and we say, hey, Colgate, are you willing to fund the cost of actually collecting and recycling your toothpaste tube or toothbrushes or Pampers? Are you willing to fund the cost of collecting and recycling your diapers? And if you are, we'll help you attract more consumers to your toothpaste versus someone else's. It's not like someone's going to buy more diapers or toothpaste, but they may choose brand A versus brand B. Or if it's a retailer that funds, in-store recycling like a Walmart or a Target, maybe that'll drive more foot traffic to them versus someone else. So we really, it's not just the art of how do you collect it and process it, though there is a lot of logistics and science and infrastructure involved, but it's figuring out the
vehicle you're
model.
Providing them.
Yeah,
that's that vehicle
right.
You're also providing them, right?
That's exactly right. And so all that comes together, but what makes the engine actually turn, the gasoline, right, is how will companies win market share, love, whatever it may be, by voluntarily funding the ability for you to recycle their products versus not having that opportunity.
Well, so who are some of the biggest champions that, have partnered with you guys so far that just kind of like, okay, early adopters, we're going in on this, I kind of have an idea, but, let's hear you tell us, because I've been seeing some of your fantastic posts on LinkedIn and all social media, which are pretty cool. And you're amazing on that, by the way.
Thank you. So, historically, we've always tried to go after the biggest players in the industry, because once you get like the number one player, then everyone tends to follow. So our first purchase order in our history came from Walmart way back when. And some of the big supporters, have been companies like Procter & Gamble, Nestle, if it's a consumer product side, or retailers, like Kroger or Walmart in the US, but we're also in 20 countries. So similar versions of those, players and retailers in those local countries. And when we get them to support, they really send a message that then leads the industry to lead in. And now we work with, I think today we have about 40,000 customers, that work with us, whether some may be startups, some may be mid-level, and then, all these larger ones like your, P&G, Mars, Nestle, Unilever, those sort of organizations.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, that's pretty impressive. Talk about how, you guys have been able to expand internationally because, you guys are starting to really get out there. You started here in the US, but now you're nationwide. And do you see other nations more committed to this recycling approach than others or more than the US? Or what do you see there too?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, we are headquartered, in New Jersey, and started as a U.S. Focused organization, and today we are in 20 countries as a mission-driven for-profit, and then we're actually in 2 countries, India and Thailand, as a non-profit organization, the Terracycle Foundation, doing similar work, but
Okay.
through the engine of a non-profit. And what brings us to new markets is always the appetite of our partners. So why we opened, say, India just recently is, once our partners started seeing the great work our foundation is doing in Thailand, they said, "Can you bring this to India?" Or, we're the reason we went to Brazil was one of our partners said, "Hey, we really want to see the work that you've done in the U.S. replicated in that region." So we always go based on the appetite of the companies we work with, and many of these companies want global solutions that are coherent, that they can really track and create standards against. That's your question on, how does America stack up, or what is the point of view of different countries? Everywhere there's a massive waste problem. It's not uniquely American. It is absolutely everywhere. And if you really zoom out, the recycling rates and what is recyclable is very similar in every country. It's not wildly different. Now, there is a big difference between developed countries and emerging markets. So developed countries, like the United States, enjoy paved roads on which garbage trucks can drive. And
Right.
maybe not really the US, but other countries, well, almost all countries outside the US have legislation that also helps recycling companies, typically called extended product responsibility legislation, which is like a packaging tax. Every time you produce a package, you pay into a tax, and that helps fund recyclers.
Right.
US, unfortunately, does not have that yet. In emerging markets, there the problem is there isn't good infrastructure. There's not roads. Garbage trucks can't drive. There's no garbage trucks. So there's a lot of litter and what you would call more professionally informal disposal, which ends up, when the rain comes, being washed into a river or a canal, that into a bigger waterway, and then ends up in our ocean. And that's a big, big issue. And so that's the real difference, is less so country by country, but more, is the country have the wealth to create the infrastructure, or are they, let's call it pre-infrastructure?
Do you see that there's also maybe a potential demographic within the society that's leading this zero waste transition more so than others?
Absolutely. And here is how the demos go. It's very, very clear. Women are awesome and men are horrible. Boys and girls under the age of 18 are equally good. There's not really like a difference between if you're a boy and a girl when you're 18 or under. You care very passionately about the environment. But then the moment, young girls and boys become men and women, the men fall off and are, very, let's say, self-motivated in their decision making, and girls and women are the ones that really drive sustainability movements. And this echoes in all ways. If you look at consumer behavior, who buys organic food, who buys fair trade, who buys things that are more circular, reusable, recyclable, tends to be more women than men. If you look at who works in the field, our company is, I believe, 65% female by staff. Which is very unique. Most garbage companies are 20%, give or take, female by staff. It's also who's attracted, to it. It's in all cases, women are where there's hope, and us being 2 men in the wrong age bracket in this example, being the worst offenders. There's a lot of work to do, and it's very important that the sustainability movement also embrace men and things men care about, because they really need to be brought in, in a way that they will, feel welcome. All right, not in a preachy way, not in a way that makes folks feel uncomfortable, but in a very empathetic way that allows even people who, may not believe in climate change to start caring about certain aspects of sustainability.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think the more times or the more ability to bring men into the conversation, I guess pull on their heartstrings a little bit, right? To get them motivated. I mean, that'd be great. I recently had a guest on the show, and she's promoting her new book called Zero Waste Living, the 80/20 Way. And it's a busy person's guide to a lighter footprint. And Stephanie Miller's the author. She did a great job. Highly recommend her book. But she kind of claims that one of the challenges that we have in society is people don't know how to properly recycle. What's
Mhm.
your thoughts on that statement?
I think she's absolutely right. There is tremendous confusion in what is recyclable. And the reason there's confusion is that it changes zip code by zip code, and it also changes month by month. And that is incredibly hard to navigate. I mean, just in Manhattan, you can be in one building where a soda bottle is recyclable and the one beside it isn't. In one building, a carton can be recycled, and the other one, it cannot. And so it's very, very difficult for an average person who's not like committed and like, a recycling professional to focus on these things and understand. And it also changes by time. Some things that were recyclable, say pre-COVID, will not be recyclable post-COVID because COVID has driven oil prices down, which makes it harder for recyclers to compete and all these other macroeconomic considerations. And so the question is what to do within that, right? Here are some sort of simple tips I would say if you're trying to navigate this and feel overwhelmed. First, the biggest thing you can do as a consumer is buy less. If you buy less, you don't have to worry about that object being recycled at all because you've bought less. And we are gouging ourselves on consumerism. I'm a hypocrite to this as well. And it's a very challenging addiction to break because everything around us reinforces the idea of buy more. We measure our success as a society with GDP, which is a measure of how much we buy, or produce, which is an equivalency. Everything is telling us to buy, and it's a good citizen if you're buying because you're helping fuel the economy and all these things. So, but that is a major addiction we have to think about. And if we don't buy, then you don't have to worry about all these problems. Now, if you do buy, what I'd recommend is first purchase, not for recyclability, but for longevity. Buy things that are going to last. That you're going to enjoy, that are going to, can you pass it to the next generation? And frankly, I think if you buy objects that fit into that realm, you can probably buy them used, and you will probably have a higher sort of quotient of delight, during your experience with it. Like your actual experience will be way better than a cheap disposable version of the same thing. Then if you're going to buy things that, like food products and so on, that, you're just going to consume and they can't last forever, then think about buying things ideally in reusable packaging. And if that's not possible, then in packaging that is very easy to be recycled. Anything in like an aluminum can is very easy. Clear PET, which is like the plastic that makes a soda bottle, very easy. Big like bottles like laundry detergent bottles or shampoo bottles, easy, and then everything else becomes progressively more challenging, right? And those are some easy guidances as you navigate the complexities where your neighbor may have a different recycling solution than you do because you may live in a different zip code.
Yeah. My wife on the woman's side of the equation here, she's like, Sean, I think we just need to like own nothing.
She's right.
Don't buy things, just own nothing. So I mean, we're getting older, and we've got a lot of things, and we don't need things, right? We have enough things. And she's like, just own nothing, Sean. And then I'm like, hey, that's a great way. I mean, that's going to eliminate waste.
She is precisely. So, I just want to really honor her answer because that is exactly the answer. Because here's the thing in sustainability, right? It's so tremendously complicated, right? We talk about like the palm oil issue, right? Which is the oil that's in just about everything. But and yes, palm oil is creating deforestation and creating habitat loss for wonderful species like orangutans. But then if you replace palm oil with a different oil, that will be more destructive, right? It's not even necessarily linear. But the one linear thing that binds all environmental issues together, whether you care about garbage or climate change, you name the topic, it's the act of purchase. The act of purchase is an active vote for more destruction on our planet to occur. And frankly, there is no good purchase. There is no such thing as a good, purchase. Even if it was the most fair trade, hippie, organic, you name it thing, it could have been, that farm that produced it could have been a forest.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it depends on how far you want to go down that chain there, right?
Yeah, and so that is the question. And this idea of hyper consumerism has only come about really in the past 70 years and since the 1950s. So it's also a new idea, which maybe gives us hope that maybe we can edit that.
Well, So I've been looking at, some of the progress you guys are making, and the genius of the Loop program. Okay. I can remember as a kid, this is a variation of a Loop system, but we would go out and we'd go search and find Coke bottles so we could take back to the store and get our 10 cents so we can go get our lollipops and, gum and candy, because we could go find these bottles and take them back, and then they'd be reused in the process. Right. So, that kind of went away back in about 1980, or, I'd say maybe, about 1980, it kind of went away. Everything went to, plastic and cans. And so now this loop program is kind of, it seems like, on surface, it's similar in concept, but with much better packaging, much better, I guess, options for the various products. Talk about how potentially that program maybe evolved. I don't know if it did, but evolved out of the national recycling partnerships that you've had with these manufacturers. Is that how that kind of started with the Loop system?
Yeah, absolutely. So Loop, which is a platform for reuse, it allows brands to create reusable versions of their product, everything from Haagen-Dazs ice cream to Tide laundry detergent and 500 products in between. So really, top tier stuff. And as you mentioned, gorgeous, functional, beautiful packaging. So it allows them to create these products, and it allows retailers to sell those in their physical stores or digital stores. And this whole idea of moving from single use to reuse actually emerged, as you very well noted, from our recycling programs, where we started asking ourselves, and so did our brand partners, is recycling enough? Is it can we rest on recycling as a solution to waste? And where we landed is that recycling is not the answer to garbage. It's the answer to the symptom of waste, but not the root cause of waste. And there is no perfect recycling solution. So no matter what, every recycling solution is an imperfect solution just to the symptom. And so the question then becomes, what is the root cause of waste? Where we landed on that is the idea of using something once. It's not plastic the problem or anything else. It's this idea of single use. And so then the question became, well, how do we move from a single use economy to a reusable economy? And we figured that what is needed is a platform for reuse, a platform that makes reuse easy and convenient. Because, look, there are scaled reuse models today in the US. Your propane tank is that.
Yeah.
Your beer keg is a reuse model. Your 5-gallon water. Those are all very functional, scaled up reuse ecosystems. But here's the issue. You can't take the propane tank to the beer place. You can't take the beer keg to the water place. And you can't take the water to the propane tank place. And that's just 3 products. They're all these, what you would call mono supply chains. So there needs to be a platform that brings it all together, where you can buy anywhere, return anywhere. I mean, Loop, we mentioned, consumer products, but we've also recently partnered with McDonald's, with Burger King. So you can imagine soon, go to, say, a McDonald's, buy your meal and coffee and reusable packaging, but then drop it off at your nearest grocery store, where you then buy your shampoo and laundry detergent in reusable packaging, and then drop it off at your next favorite store. And it's this it's like this waste management function for reuse. This platform is what Loop is trying to achieve.
So it doesn't matter like what the product was that you bought. You could drop it off at any location, and it's going to get repurposed and reprocessed back into a product for that individual, outlet or that manufacturer later.
That's exactly right. So retailers that are going in store, you'll see that with Walgreens and Kroger here in the US next year. When you go into the store, buy whatever Loop products you want, they'll have a Loop bin into which you can drop the products you bought, or any store, you can drop it anywhere, and then we give you your deposits back. This does function under a deposit method. And then just to be very clear on what we do is we take the packaging, clean it, and then provide it back to the manufacturers who refill it and then sell it again. So the package never is destroyed. It's never shredded, melted, or recycled into anything.
Okay. I like that. That's pretty awesome. No, that's great. And that's kind of how the old Coke bottle deposit things work too. You bought a case of Coke and you had to, pay $2.50 to get, the deposit, and beer bottles too, by the way.
Yep. Well, and funny, so Coke is a part of Loop, bringing back that original bottle. I mean, literally, 1-to-1, it's great. Coming back. Now, what's interesting is it did go away in the US. You're precisely right, but beer in Canada is still on that model. The entire beverage industry of Germany is still on reusable bottles. So it does exist here and there, but it's about, let's make it more than just beverages. Let's make it that you can live your life in a convenient reuse ecosystem.
That's awesome. So, okay. So what makes you so passionate about recycling and how it affects climate change? I mean, what's that, inside, thing that's making you tick this way?
So I love the idea of purposeful development, purposeful change, changing the world to be better. And if doing that through the tool of business is very exciting to me, because it's the biggest paintbrush you have. Business is perhaps the most powerful tool for change. And it's amazing along the way. You can feel very purposeful and make money. I mean, those are great two things that to go hand in hand. It's a wonderful, usually they don't go hand in hand, right? Usually, what was the 1950s approach? Make a bunch of money, then become a philanthropist. Well, why not do the two things simultaneously? And to me, that's just such a stimulating reason to, wake up every morning and work. And frankly, the purpose is more important than the money, because the purpose is there constantly. The money comes time to time when you see a paycheck or a payday or something like that.
Yeah, but you're more motivated by the purpose, and it's not like work.
It isn't work. It's it is technically work. It looks like work, but fun isn't work. And to me, feeling purposeful is tremendously fulfilling, and makes even challenging moments which occur, not so hard or not so bad.
That's great. Well, so I recently saw Terracycle just received a $25 million, investment to grow Loop and the platform. Talk about that and what that investment's going to do for you and your partners.
Yeah,
that's pretty
absolutely.
Amazing.
So, building Loop is a gargantuan feat. It is, we have to work, we're now live in 3 countries, launching in 4 more. So we got to do this globally. We got to effectively work with every consumer product company to reinvent every product to have a durable, reusable version, and then work with retailers to embed that, and then the whole infrastructure of collecting and cleaning and so on. It is a behemoth undertaking. And so, this requires a lot of capital, and not just capital for us, but each of these products that our company partners are developing are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of investment, each individual product, and the infrastructure to fill it, and so on and so forth. So it's a big lift, and what is really important in this capital raise, and we will end up raising much more capital on Loop. This is just the first capital raise, is that it shows the commitment from major, parties like P&G made a big investment, Nestle made a major investment. It's really important to show that the people who are taking part in this ecosystem are also financing its ability to survive and thrive. And it's a big undertaking. While the circular economy is a big economic opportunity when you get there, there's a lot of cost to get there, right? You have to sort of build up new approaches and new ways of thinking. And so it's really, for us, the money is very valuable, but also the symbol it sends. And, Loop will be raising, and Terracycle another major round. We're going to be out there next year raising $150 million to really boost up and bring up even more infrastructure and capability. So that's already underway, and we hope to have it complete sometime by the middle of next year.
Wow, that's Wayne, that's exciting. That's really so. Okay, well, I mean, where do you see the potential? I mean, okay, what is the potential growth you think for Loop? Because man, I think it's pretty big. I mean, you're only scratching the surface, right?
Oh, only. And I think I would measure it. The closest proxy to Loop is the idea of organic. A bunch of people got together, wanted to care about the butterflies and the bees and the birds, and created organic farming, and then convinced manufacturers to farm organically and put the organic stamp on the product, and convince retailers to put that in the store. And then consumers in the end hold the keys. They vote with their money for how big organic as an idea should be, or how small, right? And I think Loop is the exact same thing, except not picking the battle on farming practices, but picking the battle on single use versus reusable. And so our goal is, at least within the next few decades, to make reusable where it is 5, 10, 15% of consumption. That would be, I think, a reasonable goal in that amount of time. And if we achieve it, it is a massive business opportunity simultaneously.
Oh yeah, I could totally see that. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so we kind of just, touched on it. How do you see the business model evolving in the next 5 to 10 years?
So
you see it like
for Loop, the
quadrupling.
It's exponential. It's really fast. So it's very much a hockey stick growth, and it's interesting because Terracycle, which is this year will do about 60 million in revenue, is growing very healthily, but it's more geometric growth. So you have this sort of 2 ecosystems playing very differently, so for Loop, what we're really focusing on right now is where are the biggest garbage crises? The biggest area that we started with, is fast moving consumer goods, your packaged food, packaged beverage, home care products, personal care products. And if you look at Greenpeace, they put out a list of the top 10 biggest contributors to the, plastic crisis. Those are all fast moving consumer good companies. By the way, 100% of them coincidentally partners of Loop as well, because they see the issue. And the next area of exploration for us is, fast food. That's the McDonald's, the Burger King examples, or Tim Hortons. Then we're also doing some major experiments next year on clothing. And what we're really trying to figure out right now is A, how to scale, and B, how broad and applicable or relevant is reuse. Because there's no such thing as a silver bullet. Reuse isn't for everything, but we have to map out, where is that relevance and what areas to really lean in on. And that's a big sort of focus for us right now.
Are you going to start talking to Goodwill, or they're got a lot of clothing reuse over there?
Well, but here's the thing on for example, Goodwill, right? And clothing reuse today. If you donate your clothing, to a church or a Goodwill, any of these wonderful organizations, way better, by the way, than landfilling, what happens? The clothing is first sold into a secondary market in the US, and that actually only deals with about a few percent of the clothing. The vast, vast majority, over 95% of the clothing that you put into one of those church drop-ins or wherever, is resold into the third world or emerging markets on pennies a t-shirt. And the challenge right now is we buy so much clothing that these markets are flooded. They don't need it anymore. It's just way, way too much. And then not to mention it collapses local, if you're a local t-shirt manufacturer in Northern Africa, how do you compete against, 2-cent t-shirts? In the type of reuse we're looking at is how do you keep the clothing in the same market? Instead of moving it into secondary and tertiary markets, keep it in a primary market where the same consumers are buying not new clothes and donating it to less fortunate people, but the people who are buying that clothing are buying the same used clothing over and over.
Interesting.
Yeah. And think about it, where we're going to start in clothing, by the way, is in infant and to toddler, where the child grows out of the clothes within like a month or two.
Oh yeah.
There's a huge.
Okay, so now you've touched on a real key area there, I think, with the clothing, because I think clothing for, say, people like you and me, we wear these things out and then we get rid of them. People don't want our has-beens, usually at that point.
No.
But well, yeah, I can see the toddlers.
Yeah, exactly. And this is, if you think about demos, we talked about demos earlier, men are actually the best at clothing longevity. Right. Let's give our, men a compliment here. I've been wearing this t-shirt since literally high school, this particular one, coincidentally. Right. I mean, and that's not an uncommon statement. Right. Because our bodies aren't changing and male fashion is very static. Right. It's basically, t-shirt and, and jeans and everything that goes with that. Female fashion is one of the worst, and an average woman today in the Western world, just so that, because it's not that, to show the other side of this, purchase 66 apparel items a year and use them on average for 3 uses before disposal. That's an average Western female consumption. And then babies are the worst because they just grow out of it and then it's just irrelevant. So this is where, again, it's maybe it won't work for men's clothing, but it could work for women's clothing, kids' clothing, and this is what we have to map out and understand.
Sure. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Well, I did have a pre-call with Lauren earlier last week, and I did ask her the question of, well, where are all Terracycle's facilities? Because I was thinking, you're processing all this stuff into and I was like, she goes, well, we don't own any. I was like, right. Oh, okay, that makes sense. You work with third parties, and yeah. So your third party, vendor network has got to be extensive. How's that? How do you guys how have you guys been able to find the success of identifying these third-party vendors and talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So that is correct. So we do not own infrastructure because why own infrastructure? It exists. And there's so much flexibility without owning. Because of this, Terracycle has no debt. We are very fluid in our cash flow. We're able to make innovations and investments. Now we manage the supply chain in full. We own, in quotes, the supply chain in full, not the, the equipment processing it, but the supply chain itself. And we constantly innovate and do tons of R&D on inventing new solutions. And so our job, our operations team's focus is identify and manage vendors and then get vendors to implement new processes that we've invented. So we many times finance, the equipment for vendors. We help set them up. We bankroll them if needed. But in the end, we let them operate their components. Now, if you take one random supply chain, like let's say cigarette recycling, that may be 8 vendors, that participate in making cigarette recycling work. You need the transportation vendors, the warehouses where it goes, the sorting facilities, people who shred the cigarettes and then separate, the ash tobacco paper, then a different vendor who composts it, then a different vendor who takes the filter, which is made from a plastic, and pelletizes it, and then yet another series of vendors who make those into finished goods. That's a whole boatload of stuff. Now, if we owned that whole supply chain and owned all the vendors, we'd only be doing cigarette recycling today. But because we use third parties, we can be nimble, and then we can do thousands of waste streams.
That's beautiful. I love that concept. I think, you guys are hitting on something special there for that. Well, so you've got a lot of things going, a lot of, partners, a lot of people, in the ecosystem, in the, the vehicle there, so to speak. What type of digital technology are you guys using to help you, manage this business?
Yeah, I mean,
consumers.
Let's see. I think 15% of our staff are IT. And if I look at my whole, we're about just a hair under 500 people, and about 15% are folks focused, dedicated just to IT. So we develop a lot of tech. And then we use, lots of platforms, whether it's SAP or HubSpot or all these different technology platforms that allow us to be successful, and then develop our own. I mean, technology, we're not a technology company, but technology is very important to our success, even though technically you would view us as a waste management organization.
Yeah. Yeah. Any partnerships with tech, companies helping you create better solutions?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the most notable recently has been a major partnership with HubSpot to really sort of figure out how to navigate this incredibly complex business across 20 countries and make sure that all of our different divisions and team members can speak together really well and be able to share knowledge on how we're interacting with clients, because we may be doing many projects in many countries with one sort of conglomerate, and keeping that all organized is very important. So they've really, supported us in a great way in helping to bring that to life. And we hope to actually enjoy similar technology partnerships with other providers in different sectors, whether it's in R&D or finance or different areas.
That's great. I love it. So, your sales and material sales guys are pretty important to you too. You've got all these products you're generating, from all the recycling efforts, and now you got to find outlets to actually use the products. I mean, how's that been working with you? I mean, how does that work for you guys now?
Absolutely. We have a whole sales team, material sales team, who's dedicated to exactly what you described, so finding outputs for products, companies who are willing to buy our converted waste and make their products from it. And, it's been pretty amazing. And not only has it been, successful and working, but companies are really starting to lean in to talk about the waste that they're making their products from. We have done some very famous examples, like shampoo bottles with Head and Shoulders made from ocean plastic, and other things where the companies are starting to become really proud of the waste that is being used to create their various products.
That's awesome. That's good. That's great. Well, it looks like Terracycle and Loop, you guys are having a huge impact, this year in spite of COVID.
Yeah.
How have you been able to do that?
Well, I think we got lucky, to be fair. I don't think most of this is in our control, to be very fair to your question. First, COVID has helped the environmental movement in a big way. People have woken up to our real impact on the planet because, COVID has shown, that when we don't produce as much, emission levels go down, animals retreat to where they haven't been seen before, all those really, really good things. It has heightened the waste crisis. We're consuming 30% more disposable goods during COVID. So people have become more, dare I say, awoke, to the waste problem. And luckily, many of our partners who we rely on have actually succeeded out of COVID. You know, companies that make home care products and grocery stores that are essential services. We ourselves are seen as an essential service as well as being in waste management. And so, you know, those things, I think we just got very lucky, you know, just like I think, you know, the cruise ship industry got very unlucky.
Yes.
But I don't want to take too much credit, you know. I think on this one, it's in the hands of the universe a little bit.
Yeah, right. Well, it seems like the industry is really starting to embrace the, you know, the environmental social governance practices and, you know, the sustainable development goals, you know, initiatives. Yeah, and I think it appears that you guys are well positioned to help companies meet their objectives and their goals. What do you typical engagements look like for you when you talk with companies about these things?
Yeah, so we're really focused on with organizations on how do we help move from a linear to a circular economy, and then make that circular economy more tight. You know, so it's really in this progression of how do we help bring about more recycling of hard to recycle materials. That's the first step, you know, and we work with many of these different stakeholders to help advocate and bring it about in whatever way may make sense. Then how do we start, you know, thinking about how can we integrate more recycled content and do that in a way that works for business? And then of course move into more reusable ecosystems. And then really the step after that would be to think about how do we lower consumption overall. And you know, there's a lot of the large sort of thinking organizations, whether it's, you know, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, the World Economic Forum, these sort of groups that we do a lot of work with because they're trying to advocate for these system changes to very much the same organizations we are. And, you know, these are relative to these large organizations small. And so we're all working together on how to really, you know, fight that fight and bring along everyone, you know, to the same goal. And speak a common language, you know, and a common set of goals and so on.
Yeah, I mean, I think sustainability is at the forefront of every big company's minds now. You know, they're driving, you know, greenhouse gas reduction, you know, sustainability, zero waste, landfill, you know, increased recycling as much as possible. I mean, these are some big topics, and then, you know, future energies is another big thing that people are really pushing in on right now. And I think, you know, the next 5 to 10 years, these will be the leading topics in the environmental field. I mean, you know, normal environmental compliance, or, you know, like the waste management, the typical stuff, or, you know, safety, stuff like that, they're all going to be there. But I think these are going to be that's where the energy is. That's where all the focus will be, I think, coming up in the next 5 to 10 years.
I completely agree. I think we're very much going to be this century very much marked with these questions, much more than, you know, human questions, you know, like war and, you know, that our past 100 years were marked with. Excuse me. But I do think that's going to be, these are going to be the key questions this year that, or so not this year, but this century that we're really going to be thinking about. And they're just, thank God they're becoming, you know, out there, and people are really leaning in on them, and you know, and that these conversations are beginning.
Absolutely. No, this is great. And, you know, where do you see having the biggest impact in 2021? You know, we're getting ready to start a new year. What's your thoughts there?
You know, I'd say just a lot more, you know, for us, 2021 is already shaping up to be exceptionally, it's going to be a very busy year with just so much work in front of us. I mean, it's all wonderful things. You know, we are really just growing the different sectors of our business, you know, whether recycling or recycled content or loop. We will likely do a couple of acquisitions next year. We did our first one a few years ago, and we definitely have appetite to do more. You know, so all that's coming together. So we're excited to take a few weeks off, you know, in end of December here, but 2021, I think, was going to be extremely busy for the enterprise.
No, that's good. Well, I think we all could use some rest, some recharge, and some reflection on the 2020, and looking forward to 2021. Tom, I really appreciate you coming onto the show today. You know, you just fantastic guest, lots of great insights, and really like your perspective. Keep doing what you're doing, because you know, I keep thinking this. I was like, Tom, you're like the Elon Musk of recycling, dude. you got
Yeah.
so much going on, and you're kind of like, he's trying to make an impact in the environment, and you are
Yeah.
too, and you're focused specifically in this waste realm and the recycling realm. It's pretty awesome. You guys are just, killing it.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's a great compliment. And thank you for taking your time to chat today. Look forward to the next time our paths cross.
Absolutely. Hopefully that'll be in person sometime. You never
Oh,
know,
right,
because
right. Exactly.
I'm kind of getting itchy, trying to get out with all this COVID staying at home stuff. It's kind of driving
I
everybody
hear you.
crazy, right?
I hear you. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks a lot, Tom. We'll get this
Right on.
out, and I'll make sure we tag you on the episode. And thanks for your time.
Really appreciate it. Have a good one as well. Ciao.
All right. Bye bye.